Hey everybody, NikoTheLegend here. Guess what? We're reaching our 20th episode of Grimm's story tale reading with none other than your favorite narrations of NikoTheLegend. I'm excited to read the next story called Rapunzel, which is going to be a pretty good one. We all know a lot about Rapunzel and let down her hair. And I'm pretty excited to read this one for you guys, and I just want to hear what you guys have to say so far and what your favorite Grimm's fairy tale story is so far out of all the ones I've done, or just out of all this whole book. This whole book is pretty big. It looks pretty cool. It's got golden etchings and stuff. But yeah, I want to hear what your favorite tales are and what ones you're excited for me to read about. So yeah, I know this is not really a good introduction like the usual skits I do, and sometimes I just don't do any at all. I just go straight to reading. But it's been fun, so I wanted to make this one a little special by allowing you guys to determine what your favorite ones are and hear all your thoughts. So yeah, we shall get on with Rapunzel right now. There were once a man and a woman who had long in vain wished for a child. At length the woman hoped that God was about to grant her desire. These people had a little window at the back of their house from which a splendid garden could be seen, which was full of the most beautiful flowers and herbs. It was, however, surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared to go into it because it belonged to an enchantress, who had great power and was dreaded by all the world. One day the woman was standing by this window and looking down into the garden, when she saw a bed which was planted with the most beautiful rampion, and it looked so fresh and green that she longed for it and had the greatest desire to eat some. This desire increased every day, and as she knew that she could not get any of it, she quite pined away and looked pale and miserable. Then her husband was alarmed and asked, "What aileth thee, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, "if I can't get some rampion which is in the garden behind our house to eat, I shall die." The man who loved her thought, "Sooner than let thy wife die, bring her some of the rampion thyself, let it cost thee what it will." In the twilight of the evening he clambered down over the wall into the garden of the enchantress, hastily clutched a handful of rampion and took it to his wife. She at once made herself a salad of it and ate it with much relish. She, however, liked it so very much, that the next day she longed for it 3 times as much as before. If he was to have any rest, her husband must once more descend into the garden. In the gloom of evening, therefore, he let himself down again, but when he had clambered down the wall he was terribly afraid, for he saw the enchantress standing before him.
"How canst thou dare,"
said she with an angry look,
"to descend into my garden and steal my rampion like a thief? Thou shalt suffer for it."
"Ah," answered he, "let mercy take the place of justice. I only made up my mind to do it out of necessity. My wife saw your rampion from the window and felt such a longing for it that she would have died if it had not got some to eat." Then the enchantress allowed her anger to be softened and said to him,
"If the case be thou sayest, I will allow thee to take away with thee as much rampion as thou wilt. Only I make one condition: thou must give me the child which thy wife will bring to the world. It shall be treated, and I shall care for it like a mother." The man in his terror consented to everything, and when the woman was brought to bed, the enchantress appeared at once, gave the child the name of Rapunzel, and took it away with her. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child beneath the sun. When she was 12 years old, the enchantress shut her into a tower which lay in a forest, and had neither stairs nor door, but quite at the top was a little window. When the enchantress wanted to go in, she placed herself beneath it and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair to me."
Rapunzel had magnificent long hair, fine as spun gold, and when she heard the voice of the enchantress, she unfastened her braided tresses, wound them round one of the hooks of the window above, and then the hair fell 20 ells down, and the enchantress climbed up by it. After a year or two, it came to pass that the king's son rode through the forest and went by the tower. Then he heard a song, which was so charming that he stood still and listened. This was Rapunzel, who in her solitude passed her time in letting her sweet voice resound. The king's son wanted to climb up to her and looked for the door of the tower, but none was to be found. He rode home, but the singing had so deeply touched his heart that every day he went out into the forest and listened to it. Once when he was thus standing behind a tree, he saw that an enchantress came there, and he heard how she cried,
"Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair."
Then Rapunzel let down the braids of her hair, and the enchantress climbed up to her. "If that is the ladder by which one mounts, I will go for once try my fortune," said he. And the next day, when it began to grow dark, he went to the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair." Immediately the hair fell down and the king's son climbed up. At first Rapunzel was terribly frightened when a man such as her eyes had never yet beheld came to her. But the king's son began to talk to her quite like a friend and told her that his heart had been so stirred that it had let him have no rest and he had been forced to see her. Then Rapunzel lost her fear, and when he asked her if she would take him for her husband, and she saw that he was young and handsome, she thought,
"You will love me for more than the old Dame Gothels does."
and she said yes, and lay her hand in his. She said,
"I will willingly go away with thee, but I do not know how to get down. Bring with thee a skein of silk every time that thou comest, and I will weave a ladder with it. And when that is ready, I will descend, and thou wilt take me on thy horse."
They agreed that until that time he should come over to her every evening, for the old woman came by day. The enchantress remarked nothing of this, until once Rapunzel said to her,
"Tell me, Dame Gothel, how it happens you are so much heavier for me to draw up than the young king's son. He is with me in a moment." "Ah, thou wicked child,"
cried the enchantress.
"what do I hear thee and I say? I thought I separated from thee from the world, and yet thou hast deceived me."
In her anger, she clutched Rapunzel's beautiful tresses, wrapped them twice around her left hand, seized a pair of scissors with the right, and snip, snap, they were cut off, and the lovely braids lay on the ground. And she was so pitiless that she took poor Rapunzel into a desert where she had to live in a great grief and misery. On the same day, however, that she cast out Rapunzel, the enchantress in the evening fastened the braids of hair which she had cut off to the hook of the window when the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair." She let the hair down. The king's son ascended, but he did not find his dearest Rapunzel above, but the enchantress, who gazed at him with wicked and venomous looks.
"Aha!"
she cried mockingly.
"Thou wouldst fetch thy dearest, but the beautiful bird sits no longer singing in the nest. The cat has got it, and will scratch out thy eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to thee, thou wilt never see her more."
The king's son was beside himself with pain, and in his despair he leapt down from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns into which he fell pierced his eyes. Then he wandered quite blind about the forest, ate nothing but roots and berries, and did nothing but lament and weep over the loss of his dearest wife. Thus he roamed about in misery for some years, and at length came to the desert where Rapunzel, with the twins to which she had given birth, a boy and a girl, lived in wretchedness. He heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar to him that when he went towards it, and when he approached, Rapunzel knew him and fell on his neck and wept. Two of her tears reddened his eyes, and they grew clear again. He could see with them as before. He led her to his kingdom, where he was joyfully received, and they lived for a long time afterwards, happy and contented. Man, this book is like 600 plus pages of good stories. We're only on page 90 something. So many great stories, so many great tales. I'm excited to have just narrated that. I really appreciate you guys being patient with me on this and dealing with my somewhat shitty narration, but I do my best, and I love reading, I love writing, so I decided to love speaking of writing and reading. So it's pretty fun, and I would like to know all the different Grimm's fairy tale stories because Disney likes to take them and blow them out of proportion. But they do get somewhat close to it. It's not completely spun around. So thanks, guys. This will be the 20th episode reading of a Grimm's story. Please enjoy the rest of your year.